Okay, hello everybody. We'll let everybody get situated here, and then Jason and I will get started in just a minute. I have a feeling that everyone on here is has a senior, but maybe you could put in the chat just so we know what year your student is graduating high school. I'm assuming it's going to be 2026, but um, let us know so we know what we're working with. Okay, thank you. Yep, looks like everyone is
Mhm.
has a senior.
Seniors, okay. All right, good deal, good deal.
Hopefully, well, tonight we're going to review, what's next, assuming that you've submitted your forms, but also, um, if you haven't submitted the FAFSA profile yet, just a brief overview on that, so you know what you're getting yourself into.
You have to look forward to, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
All right. Oh, got twins. Yeah. Yep.
Seems like a lot of twins. And this is being recorded, so you will get a email. I don't know if it's tonight or tomorrow, but you will get emailed a recording. And at the end, we'll give you like the landing page where you guys can go and even download it if you want yourself. So I know that's a common question, but this is being recorded, and somehow, some way, you'll get that recording.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, we'll try to answer questions as we're going along here. I don't know if you said this, Dan, but please drop them in the Q&A. Questions go in the Q&A, not the chat. Because it's difficult for us to reply to answers or questions in the chat. It's much easier, much better if they're in the Q&A. So make sure if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A, and whoever's not talking, the other one, maybe we'll try to get to those questions if we can. And we may have a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions too. We'll see.
Yeah, I think we should have time for questions today, so feel free to pop as many of those in as we go. If we say something confusing, or maybe we skip something that you wanted us to address, just understand that anything like hyper specific is going to be tough for us to answer in this type of an environment. But we'll do our best. Um, and okay, as a way of introduction, my name is Dan Maga. I am out of the Chicagoland area. Um, and I've been working with parents on helping them figure out how to pay for their kids' college education since 2004. So a little over 20 years of working with parents on the financial side, um, filling out FAFSA's profiles, all that good stuff. And then recently joined the College Aid Pro team, maybe like a year and a half ago. But again, 20 years on my own previously doing this before I joined College Aid Pro. And Jason Slone is my co-presenter tonight.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. So I'm a little bit about my background. I've been in higher ed actually for over 20 years. Been a college professor since 2002, and I was a university dean for 7 of those years. So I always joke I'm the former dean that spills the beans. And then I've been a financial advisor since 2008. I've been doing college planning since 2019. And I got into this for selfish reasons. I have three kids of my own. I got two in college right now. So parents, I feel your pain. I've gone through this as a parent, and so anyway, I've been with College Aid Pro for a while now, and just really enjoy helping parents figure out how to navigate this crazy financial aid system we have here in this country. So hopefully tonight will be helpful for you and figure out the next steps. I know we're getting a lot of questions about, all right, I filled the FAFSA, now what? So
Yeah, right. Well, good. That you're in the right spot. So,
yeah, that's right.
all right, why don't we get started here? Um,
I'm going to jump into the Q&A and start knocking out some of
okay,
those.
can you see my screen okay?
Yep, it looks good to me.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, and here at College A Pro, really, hopefully, what this is designed to do is, to end the student debt crisis and by empowering families to shop smarter for college. That's kind of whole motto here, especially with, our website designed to help parents and students understand, hey, based on their particular situation, what they can expect in terms of grants and scholarships from the universities their kids are planning to attend prior to applying. Um, Now, quick little disclaimer, just in case you haven't completed the forms. A lot of people, hey, if I'm not going to qualify for need-based grants, should I even bother submitting the FAFSA on the profile? Um, One, I do run into people quite a bit who actually qualify for grants and they didn't think they were going to, especially business owners or maybe people who have kind of some funky stuff going on in their tax return. Maybe their tax return isn't really indicative of their actual income. But there's definitely times where I see people actually qualifying for grants when they didn't think they were going to. Um, some schools, NYU, Santa Clara, there's some others, they require the FAFSA or financial aid forms to be filed to be eligible for their merit scholarships. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. So merit aid is typically just, or the most common, I would say, is based on the student's grades and test scores or admissions applications. But there are some schools that require to apply for aid for their merit-based scholarships. Um, there's also some schools, although rarely, that if you don't apply for aid the freshman year, you cannot apply for aid sophomore through senior year. So you definitely don't want to not apply the first year and then not have the ability to apply years 2, 3, and 4. Um, for appeals, listen, if you're going to try and negotiate or appeal or talk to a school about increasing your award in the spring after you've heard back from the schools, you're going to need to have applied for financial aid to even have that conversation. Applying for aid is basically saying you need help. So if you never applied for financial aid, they're not even going to be able to look at your appeal um, in the spring if you never even went through that process to get started. So, kind of like I also say it's kind of like a mini insurance policy in case something within your financial situation changes, between now and when your student is done with their freshman year. And remember, a lot can happen over that time period. Their freshman year is not going to end until, May of 2027, and they're basing it off of income you earned back in 2024. So something changes throughout that period. Having these forms on file is going to allow you to appeal. And then federal direct student loans. Can't get any federal loans, either parent or student, without the FAFSA being on file. Um, and some people either may want to take advantage of those loans as a way to cover some of the cost, or even maybe if you have the capital, you may want to use those student loans as a way to defer the cost, or simply, maybe putting some skin in the game on your kids or some financial responsibility. Um, Another one that's not on here that I would say, and there are some schools, not your super large public universities, but generally you're like smaller liberal arts colleges, who I see offering grants to everyone who fills out the FAFSA, $1,000 to $2,000, like an early FAFSA filer grant, even to those who don't qualify. So again, these forms are free. They can only make money available to you. You're never going to hear Jason or myself tell you, "Hey, don't fill out this free form that could potentially help you," and all it costs you is your time to complete it. So I do think everyone should be applying for financial aid, even if you don't think you're going to be qualifying. So, how do we apply? First things first, the FAFSA form. This is going to be required by all schools. It went live on October 1st. For the 26-27 school year, it's going to be based off of the income that you earned back in 2024. So they're looking 2 years back in terms of income. And then when you're submitting your asset values, or when you're putting down your asset values on the FAFSA, that's going to be as of the day you fill out the FAFSA. So the income is from 2 years ago. The asset values are as of the day you fill it out. Um, if the parents are divorced, let's say, for example, mom and dad are divorced and they live in separate households, and neither mom or dad is remarried, only one of them can complete the FAFSA as the custodial parent. So if you're divorced, you can't both do it. Only one of you can if neither of you are remarried. Um, and the parent that they want to submit the form, or the custodial parent, is the one who provided majority of the student's financial support the preceding 12 months. It is not who claimed the kid on the tax return. It is not who the kid lived with. It is not which parent earned more money. It's which parent provided a majority of that student's financial support the preceding 12 months. So this is an area that we can get strategic, because on the FAFSA form, if they're only looking at one parent's income and assets, it is plausible that one parent is going to put the student in a better position to qualify for grants than the other. And that's definitely something that we're working with divorced parents on in terms of, hey, here's how we should apply for aid based on the divorce situation so that we can be in the best position to maximize our eligibility. Um, and before you can even complete the FAFSA, both the parent and the student has to create what's called an FSA ID. So you'll need to create those logins and passwords for both the student and one of the parents before you can even get into the form and start submitting it. So that's the first step if you haven't done the FAFSA is creating those FSA ID accounts for both yourself and your student. Here's a couple quick tips. Again, hopefully I think everyone on here has already done the FAFSA, but just in case, a couple tips. One, you don't have to include any retirement values on the FAFSA. So IRA, 401k, profit sharing plans, Roth IRA, none of those values are going to go anywhere on this form. In addition to that, your primary residence is also protected. So your retirement accounts and your home, those values should not be anywhere on the FAFSA form. 529s, this can get a little bit confusing, but assuming the parent owns the 529 and the child is the beneficiary, which is the most common way to do that, you are then going to report the 529 value as a parental asset, but only for the student that is going to college or that's listed on the FAFSA. So if you've got two kids, Johnny and Susie, and Johnny's going to college, but Susie's in 8th grade, you're only going to list Johnny's 529 value on the FAFSA. You're not going to list Susie's because she's not going to college. Now, if you're in a divorce situation and mom is the custodial parent and mom's filling out the FAFSA, but her ex-husband or dad owns the 529 for the benefit of the student, mom does not have to report that value on her FAFSA because she does not own the 529. Same would go for if a grandparent owned a 529 for the benefit of the student, you're not reporting grandparent asset values on the FAFSA either. So again, in that scenario, that 529 value would not have to be reported. Do not assume your SAI or student aid index is what you will actually be expected to pay at each college. Remember, this is just like the barometer to determine, hey, here's how much you're eligible for an aid, which is the difference between the SAI and the cost of the school. But just because you're eligible doesn't mean the college is obligated to provide you a grant. Generally speaking, the private schools will do a better job of offering grants than the public ones, especially here, in the Chicagoland area. Get Miami University of Ohio and Indiana University, two very popular schools that tons of kids apply to. They do not offer institutional need-based grants to anyone. So I don't care what your SAI is, you're not getting a grant from Indiana or Miami. So if your SAI is 5,000, don't be thinking, ooh, Indiana's 65,000, they're going to give me a $60,000 grant. No, they're not. They're not going to give you anything. You might get a scholarship, might get a federal grant, Pell Grant, but you're not going to get an institutional grant from Indiana. So that's where the College Aid Pro software is going to come in because you put your profile in, you put your information in, and then it's going to tell you, hey, here's what these schools cost. Here's what they should be awarding. Don't overvalue your business or if you have like a rental property, things of that nature. One, if your business has less than 100 employees, you don't have to report it on the FAFSA. But two, it seems like everyone who has their own business, I feel like, is overvaluing that business to the schools when they don't necessarily need to do that. And obviously, we don't want to miss any deadlines. That's really what's confusing here because every school has a different deadline based on the college and how the student applied. Early decision, early action, regular decision. So you need to check the college's website to see when the forms are due. Okay, for the CSS profile, this is unlike the FAFSA that's required for every school. This is an additional financial aid form that's only required by certain colleges. There's about 250 out there that require it. University of Miami, Florida, Vanderbilt, the Ivy League schools, Tulane, examples of some schools that require this form on top of the FAFSA. Big difference between the SAI calculation in these two. The CSS is going to require your home's information. So you're going to have to list, excuse me, all those detail, excuse me, on the CSS. And for divorced parents, now you've got to put, Jason, take the slide for me.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I don't want to lose you. We don't want to lose you. It's really interesting. All right, CSS profile. Okay, so like the FAFSA, it goes live on 10 October 1st. While every school requires the FAFSA, there's only several hundred that require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. But again, it's in addition to, right? So um, generally speaking, it's mostly private schools. There are some publics like Wisconsin, Michigan, that require it, but usually it's private schools. And a little bit different than the FAFSA. One is um, on the FAFSA that you don't have to report the home equity in your primary residence. So if you don't own any other real estate, then you wouldn't need to report anything in the FAFSA. But when you file the CSS profile, you do have to report the home equity and it's treated as a liquid asset. A lot of schools are like, yeah, we think you could take some money out of your house to pay for college. Now, some schools don't, some do, so it varies from school to school. But the point is, you are going to have to report that on the CSS profile, and you want to make sure you don't overestimate the value of your home. This is the one time in life you want to look as poor as possible, so you don't want your house to look like it's worth more than than you have to report it as. And another difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile is on the FAFSA, only one parent has to file if you're in a divorce or separated family situation. But the CSS profile, the non-custodial parent is also going to have to file. They're going to have to file what's called a non-custodial CSS profile. Okay. Now, if it is an unfortunate situation where one parent is not around, or heaven forbid, there's some kind of court order preventing the person from interacting with the student and so forth, you can apply for a non-custodial waiver. And if that waiver gets approved, then the non-custodial parent doesn't have to file. But I'll be just honest with you, a lot of these schools are pretty tough on this one. You have to really demonstrate that there's a good reason for the non-custodial parent not to file. And it's not a good reason that they don't want to, or they're not going to help. That's not a good enough reason for a lot of these colleges. So if you do a non-custodial waiver and they ask what the reason is, and you say, well, he's just refusing to do it, or she's just refusing to do it, or she's not helping, he's not helping, that's not good enough. And unfortunately, for a lot of schools, that means the kid's not going to get financial aid there. So that's a big difference too. Um, and business owners, oof. If you're a business owner, I think Dan mentioned, the new rule for the FAFSA is if you got a family business with fewer than 100 employees, you don't even have to report it. But on CSS profile, you do. And if you report that you have a business, then that's going to unlock a whole bunch of other questions that you're going to have to answer as a business owner. And it can get very, very invasive. So if you are a business owner, you're going to want to make sure you have plenty of time and all of your documentation ready to go, because they're going to ask you, when was the business incorporated? How do you file? Who gets paid from it? Did somebody take a salary? Are there family members involved? What's the business valuation? What's the primary product or service? I mean, it's just tons and tons and tons of questions. And so it's very, very invasive if you're a business owner. And same kind of thing with the primary home equity in your primary residence. If you're a business owner, you do not want to overestimate the value of your business here, because they're looking at that like, oh yeah, that's they're a high value business. They could afford lots of college. You can pay a lot for college, but so I know as a business owner, you like to think your business is worth as much as possible. But for financial aid purposes, you want to do the opposite. You want your business to look as low in value as defensible, honestly. So it is just much more invasive and complex with a lot more questions than the FAFSA. Our joke around College Aid Pro is, if you're going to drink a beer or have a glass of wine while you fill out the FAFSA, well, you might want to get an entire box of wine to fill out the CSS profile if you're fancy like my wife and me and drink box wine. So, um, and um, and another difference is with the FAFSA, the student's going to have a FSA ID, and the parent contributor is going to have an account. So there's two different accounts, two different IDs. When it comes to the CSS profile, um, only the student needs the account. Okay, and it's actually going to be the account with the College Board that they use to take the SAT, for example. So the student logs in, and then you just contribute to that student's account. There's not a separate account or ID or anything, unless, of course, it's the non-custodial. They will have to have a separate. All right. Next slide there. Now, some tips on the profile. Okay. This is probably the biggest one. Number one is there are a bunch of questions the profiles will ask you, and you don't have to feel obligated to answer them. If it's not required, you don't have to answer the questions because it's not required. All right. And so, whether or not to answer them is really kind of up to you, but you got to, here's how I think about it is a lot of the questions on the CSS profile are fishing expedition questions. They're trying to figure out how much money you have and therefore how much they can charge you. Remember, I joke I'm the former dean that spills the beans. Yeah, these colleges are big businesses and they're, like any big business, they want to charge you as much as possible. And so a lot of these questions are meant to trip you up and for them to fish and find how much, money you got here and money you got there and that kind of thing. And our position is they don't need to know all that information unless they need to know it, right? And so if it's not required, you don't have to answer it. Now, there might be some questions on there where it makes sense to answer. Okay, it might make sense to answer those questions because it makes you look better from a financial aid perspective, for example. But just keep that in mind. You don't have to answer any question that's not required. All right. Now, number two, I already mentioned this. I'm going to say it again. I'll say it a million times. Don't overvalue your real estate, whether it's your primary residence or other real estate. Do not overvalue that, right? That can only hurt you. So we always say least defensible value. All right. So now you can't go crazy with this, of course. That'll raise red flags and they'll go out hunting and find their own valuation. If your house is worth, ballpark $500,000 and you put down it's worth $100,000, well, that's probably they're gonna look at that and go, yeah, that's not true. And they'll go out and find a Zillow number or Redfin number or something and put it in themselves. But don't overstate, that's for sure. Don't overestimate how much you think it's worth. Least defensible value, we always say. If you got any real estate agents who are friends, or you're a real estate agent yourself, well, maybe pull some comps and see if you can get the lowest comp number. And as long as you get asked, you can justify it. That's the point. You want to keep it as low as possible. Now, number three, don't include 529 counts in student assets, student savings and investments. Okay, students are the beneficiaries of that money, not the owners of the money. I know it's a subtle but it's an important difference. It's a parent-owned asset because the parent or grandparent, is the owner, not the student. The student is a beneficiary. Okay, so just make sure you don't put 529 money as a student asset on either the FAFSA or the CSS profile. All right. Okay, number four, you're going to get a question on the CSS profile. How much can you pay for college each year? How much does the student expect the parents to contribute? And this is again one of those fishing expedition questions. Don't overstate how much you can comfortably pay. Okay, so let's say you built a budget, you can do it in MyCap or you work with us, we'll help you build a budget. And it comes out you can afford, say, $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year for college. But one of the colleges you're applying to is $90,000. And your family philosophy is, well, if they get in, we'll figure it out. The most dangerous words in college planning. And so you're like, okay, we'll put 90,000 there because if he gets in, we'll figure it out. Well, if you put $90,000 on there, they're going to charge you $90,000. Okay. And then if you say, wait a minute, we don't want to pay that much, so we can't afford that. They say, well, you put it on the form. So you got to be very, very careful with this question. How you answer it can only hurt you. It cannot help you. So, we say be very, very, very conservative on how much you estimate. I always say, how much do you want to pay? For a lot of parents, I don't want to pay much at all, 20,000 or something like that. And so that's maybe a better way to think about it. Number five, don't estimate, um, your future income earnings. This is another fishing question. Oh, how much are you going to make this year? How much do you anticipate making? Are you going to have a job change next year? These kinds of questions, they are fishing to try to find out if they can charge you more. Okay. And so, again, you do not want to overstate this as well. All right. So we always say if you're basically in the same job, put what you're making this year. Even if you say, well, I'm hoping to get a raise next year, I'm hoping to get a promotion, I'm hoping to get a bonus, I'm hoping to get a big commission come through. Don't put that on there. You haven't gotten it for sure. And it's only going to hurt you if you put it on there. Okay. So don't estimate future income or earnings. Be very, very conservative with that. Okay, now there's going to be a question at the end of the CSS profile about special circumstances. Do you have any special circumstances? Our recommendation, I know a lot of parents want to say, yeah, you want to explain everything to them at this point. Like, my goodness, you've asked me all these questions, but you haven't asked me about we're caring for an aging parent, or we've had a job, we got all these things going on, and da, da, da. And you want to tell them on that form. Well, our advice, our recommendation is in almost every case is hold off sharing your special circumstances for an appeal. Okay. So in other words, just file it, put no special circumstances. And then in the spring, when your student gets their financial aid award offer, again, I use that word strategically on purpose. It's an offer. When they make you a financial aid offer, you can appeal that offer if you have special circumstances. And it's much better from a strategy tactic perspective to explain your circumstances in an appeal rather than on the form itself. And just one reason why, just one. There's many, but we don't need to get too far into this. If you put all your special circumstances on the form and then they make you a financial aid award offer, you can't go to them and say, yeah, but I've got these special circumstances. They're going to go, yeah, we know. You put them on the form. We already took it into consideration. Now you're sitting, you're dead in the water. You have no leg to stand on, nothing to appeal on. So if you wait and explain this in an appeal process from a strategy perspective, you're likely to have better success. Okay. And then the last tip for CSS profile, don't miss deadlines. And every school's got a different deadline, and every type of application has a different. So this gets to be a project in and of itself, just managing all these deadlines. Because if your kid's applying early decision one, or early action, or early decision two, or regular decision at 20 different colleges, I mean, you could potentially have 60 different deadlines that you need to make sure you meet. So you want to make sure you're not missing any deadlines because you could miss out on financial aid. Worst case scenario, you might not get an offer. I mean, but more likely the case is you could potentially lose out on aid. And it's definitely going to delay everything, okay, which pushes everything back in the process, and it's already takes forever. And so if you meet all your deadlines, you got first shot at priority filing, financial aid, but also it keeps the process on track, so it's not all backing up until late spring, and then it's just a mess. So okay, so those are some profile tips. Now, why are we talking about all this? Because next part of this is what if you made a mistake? All right, now that you know all this stuff, that's why I know this is about what next. You need to know all that kind of stuff because it could be that you made mistakes. You just learned that tonight in our webinar. Okay. What do you do? The good news is you can correct mistakes. You can fix them. So don't panic. Don't panic. You can fix your mistakes. All right. And you can fix mistakes on the FAFSA and you can fix mistakes on the CSS profile. Okay. And so the way you're going to do it though is when it comes to the FAFSA, you would log into the student's account, not the parents. Even if it's a mistake on the parent's information, you're going to log into the student account and make corrections there. Okay, and it's a pretty simple process. Studentaid.gov actually has a tutorial video on how to make corrections, but basically going to go in, you're going to look at all the different sections to find the one where you made the mistake and go in and correct it and then sign and submit it. Okay. This is also going to be true for adding schools to the FAFSA. So it maxes out at 20 schools. You can put in 20 schools on the FAFSA, but maybe your kid's applying to more than those. This is a true story, Dan. I have a client this year whose kid's applying to 45 colleges. So what do you do if it's more than 20? Well, it's almost like a correction. You got to put in 20 schools, whatever 20 you want, submit your FAFSA. You're going to wait 3, 4, 5 days.
They actually applied to 45, or they said they're going to apply to 45?
25 actually applied.
Oh my God. Are
Yeah.
what's wrong with them?
They're very excited about the process, I think. Nah, I mean, in their defense, he's an athlete and he's trying to see if he can get on a bunch of different teams. But anyway, so you put in your 20 schools, you hit the FAFSA, submit it. You're going to wait 3, 4, 5 days, let it process, go back into the student account, just like making corrections, and you'll see it's processed, right? As opposed to in progress or draft or something like that. When you see it's processed, then you know that FAFSA info has been sent to those 20 schools. So at that point, you can delete all those 20 and add more. Okay, we're going to do this twice for that family. We're going to do three FAFSAs, but that's how you do that. And on the CSS profile, you're going to log into your student's profile. Again, there is no parent CSS unless there's not so, but you're going to go in the student CSS profile and make corrections through the tab on the dashboard. That's pretty straightforward. It's going to say corrections right there. So you can fix mistakes. That's the take home message from that slide. Okay, now what happens after submission? Okay. Well, sometimes there could be what's called verification. They're going to want to verify that what you put on the information is accurate. Okay, and this is it's common. It's not doesn't happen to every single parent, but it happens to quite a few. And if you are selected for verification, you may have to provide some forms. You may have to provide some, for example, taxes, tax returns, or W-2, something like that. So we always recommend that if that you are selected for verification for your tax returns, you can get a tax transcript for the IRS from the IRS for your 2024 tax returns. Because remember, prior year rule, if your kid's going to college 26, they're looking at your stuff, your income from 2024. So you want to get a tax transcript from the IRS. And then the other thing too is depending on the timing, they may want 2025 taxes. So we're just at the end of 2025 now. If you get selected for verification, come up here, and they ask for 2025, you'll need to have your tax returns available, ideally. Okay. So we say file your 2025 taxes as soon as possible in 2026. Call your CPA, call your tax preparer and say, look, I'm in a financial aid pinch. I need to get my tax returns done first. Can you put me at the front of the line for your tax return for this year? Because if you have your tax returns filed, you can provide that. Okay, so that's what potentially can happen is you could get asked for verification from the FAFSA and potentially from the schools that use the CSS profile, as we'll see here. I think it's the next slide. Yeah, that's the important part of it. You didn't do anything wrong. This is just part of the process. Some families get asked for verification. Now, what happens after you submit the CSS profile? Generally, it's probably good to get those filed at about the same time or maybe on the same day, ideally. We try to do those with a lot of our families at College A Pro that hire us to help them. But same thing could happen. You could get you're going to go through a verification process. Okay. Now, CSS profile again is administered by the College Board. And the College Board is the company that administers that. They have a file sharing system. It's called iDoc. And that's where for CSS profile, you can upload tax returns, W-2s, and those kinds of things. Okay, so you submit the CSS profile. The next step is going to be verification. And you'll see all the schools listed in there are going to request these documents from her. So you log into the CSS profile. We'll show you a screenshot here in a sec what that looks like. And you submit the iDoc. Typically, they're going to want, because the College Board, unlike the FAFSA, is not connected to the IRS database, they can't pull over your tax returns automatically. So you got to provide them. You got to upload them. So typically, you have to upload the parent's tax return, the parent's W-2s, 1099s, those kinds of things, different Schedule K, whatever. The students' tax returns, if they submitted a tax return, students' W-2s. And there might be another form or two, but it'll be listed in there if the colleges are recommending it. Okay, so the schools that use the CSS profile schools that use the iDoc, you'll put all your documents up into the iDoc system, and then they'll go in and pull them out. Now, however, there are some CSS profile schools. I know it's just a pain in the behind, but there are some CSS profile schools that want verification but don't use iDoc. And this has happened to a couple of families of mine this week. In that case, what happens is your student is likely to get an email directly from the college. And they'll say, hey, you've been selected for verification. Please upload the following documents to this link or something. They'll give you a link to their system. But notice what I said there. Your student will be contacted. Let me say it one more time. Your student will be contacted. They're not going to contact mom and dad. This is not how it works anymore. They're not going to send you a paper letter in the mail or anything either. It's going to be an email to your student, or it's going to show up in your student's college portal. So your student has to be diligent about checking their email, checking their portal on a regular basis, because if the college makes a request for you to upload some documents and the student doesn't notice it, then you're not going to get a financial aid over because your application is incomplete. Okay, so your student has to be diligent and be checking on this on a regular basis. So again, it's typically tax returns, W-2s of the parent of the kid if the kid filed one, maybe some other forms. There's like a non-filer tax form if your student did not file a tax return, but it'll list what documents you have to upload in the iDoc system, or if you get an email directly from a college, it's going to tell the college is going to tell you what they need. Okay, so verification is possible for FAFSA, and you're going to have to do it for CSS profile because they're not connected to the IRS database.
All right, why don't we go through into my cap right now real quick.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Again, I think most people here probably, or I would think, already have an account, but just in case, you never know. Um, so if you don't have an account, this is kind of what the platform looks like on the homepage. You'll see here after entering your information, finances, kids' grades and scores. You've got your federal SAI. This is for the schools that only require the FAFSA. The institutional SAI is for the schools that have that CSS profile requirement. The reason that there's a range there is because those are the schools that look at the equity in your home, and certain schools are valuing it more heavily than others. Um, then on your right hand side, that you can see in this profile all the colleges that we've added. And what it's showing you is the net price anticipated for this family after any potential grants and scholarships, which is why you might say, well, Northwestern, they're not $46,000 a year. They're far more expensive than that. But you see, this family should be qualifying for a significant amount of grants, which then reduces Northwestern's price point. Whereas Cal, although less expensive on paper, popular public school, not anticipated to offer any grants or scholarships. So if you're, this might be, you know, um, this part of the website might not be as beneficial if your kids already kind of decided where they're going to apply, but especially if you have younger kids or your kids still aren't sure where they're going to apply, it's going to help you understand what you can anticipate before the student applies. Because once you hear these awards back from the schools in the spring, now you've missed all the application deadlines. So if you applied to a bunch of CALs, you didn't get any money. When you find that out in mid-March, you've got no other options. So now's when you've got to kind of get that figured out if you're trying to stay within a certain budget. So the software is going to help you understand that based on your particular information, both for either need-based grants as well as merit-based scholarships. Um, so hopefully everyone's kind of utilizing this to their advantage. Is there anything else you think I should bring up here within the software before we go back into the presentation?
No, that's good. That's good stuff.
Okay.
I was just reading a question here. So
All right, so here, and I think someone just asked this question in the chat. I don't see how to correct the CSS in the dashboard. You can see right there that correct your CSS profile. That's where it should be. But I even had one today that the client asked me to correct it and it wasn't working. I'm not sure if they'd done their own correction because I think you can only do one correction. So just make sure you don't want to be going in and out of this form and doing corrections all the time. Plus, that sends red flags to the colleges anyway. So if you're going to correct the CSS, make sure you go through the whole form and you're only doing that correction once. Two, if it's a real important correction, quite honestly, I don't know that the schools even notice this. I would be contacting the financial aid offices directly and making them aware of the change or the mistake that you made. Do not just assume that they're going to get notified through the CSS. But FAFSA, same thing. You don't want to be going into that FAFSA form and correcting it every couple of days. Like it's just the school sees all that and then it just pops up red flags. So if you're changing like asset values, things of that nature, you're going to want to be able to prove that to the colleges when they more than likely ask for verification. Okay, in terms of the income, we had some questions on that. In the FAFSA, remember, your income is going to be automatically imported into the FAFSA form. So if you're going through the FAFSA and you're like, it didn't ask about my income, that's okay. That's because it got imported automatically through the IRS. If you do have to enter your income, It's because it wasn't able to be imported, and then you would have to enter everything manually. Um, but the key thing they're looking at from your income, again, it's from 2 years ago, and it's the adjusted gross income or line 11. So that takes into account not only your wages, but your interest, your dividends, capital gains, basically everything. So that's the key line item they're looking at in terms of income. And then it's going to be the net of the adjusted gross income less your federal taxes paid. So it's that net income that they're looking at. And then for the student, there's an income allowance of just over $11,000. So if your kid earns less than that, 10,000, 9,000, whatever, it's not going to have any negative impact on their eligibility for financial aid if it's less than that $11,500 number. Now, this is a common thing too. You're applying for aid based on 2024's income and you lost your job or you had a capital gain, it's not indicative of your 2025 situation. So it's going to be critical for you to make the colleges aware of this. They're not going to know you lost your job or 2024 was an anomaly unless you go out and tell them. And you're going to want to tell them directly. More than likely, they're not going to talk to you about this until after your student's been accepted. And then maybe not until after the 2025 return has been filed. So if you know your 25 income is going to be less than 24's, it's in your best interest to file that tax return in the winter, spring as quickly as you can. So then you can turn it over to the colleges and then they can adjust their award based on the updated income before your student has to commit by the standard May 1st deadline. So definitely in your best interest. And those are, I would say, the low hanging fruit, so to speak, of appeals to win when you have a, kind of a dramatic change in your income. But there can be other things too, medical expenses, things of that nature that you would be appealing for. I would just say the income is probably one of the easiest. But again, up to you to do that. Don't just assume because you wrote about it on the CSS profile that they're going to take it into account. You need to tell the college and then more than likely file like their formal institutional appeal type paperwork with them so that they can take it into account. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Okay. Types of appeals. I just talked about the need-based appeal in terms of the 24 income being more than 25. I think that's like the easiest one to kind of like win and diagnose how successful you're going to be. But anything that reduces income from 24 to 25, you got to appeal. Medical expenses are a key one. I would say, as well as if you're paying for K through 12 private high school, um, if you're supporting other family members, especially like parents, maybe if you're not even supporting them financially, but you're like kind of taking care of them a lot and you're not able to maybe earn as much as you could had you not been taking care of mom or dad. Um, I think those are all really like critical reasons that you can appeal. Um, and then you've got merit aid appeals. So this is based on the academic merit scholarship that the school gave your student based on usually their grades and test scores. So, one common way to appeal that would be if they retook the test or their grades increased since they applied for admission, that would be a great reason to go back to the school and ask for more funding. Other reasons might be maybe you've got similar schools, but one school offered a larger merit scholarship than the other. That'd be another great reason to go back to the school to see if they can match or, maybe come up with more money. Um, other reasons might be, or other ways you might be having the student reach out and, telling their story as to why they want to go to that college, why it's their number one school, but, mom and dad said they can't afford it because they got better offers elsewhere or whatever. Having the student kind of lead the charge there in terms of the merit scholarships, I think that could be a good avenue to go down. There's there's no downside to appealing. It doesn't cost you anything, and it can only make more money available to you. They're not going to take the money away. So, kind of like filling out the FAFSA, there's no downside outside of the time it takes you to complete the paperwork. You just got to be smart about how and why you're appealing to try and get ideally the best results. Okay. Should we always appeal? I mean, I would say that for sure, in terms of, the bad news first, if you're looking at like Penn State, Indiana, UConn, if you don't have any major financial changes, those schools are going to be the hardest to deal with. They're probably not going to care about what other schools are going to award. They've got so many kids applying for so few spots. They're generally not doing a good job of providing grants anyway. Um, I just, those are going to be the toughest ones, for sure. Definitely more of a chance at a private school. Um, and, other ones could be, maybe you just finalized a divorce or you're in the middle of a divorce. I mean, there's a lot of expenses related to that, right? That isn't maybe necessarily on your tax return. Those are things that you have to try and bring up to the school to see if they can kind of look at you in a different light to make more money available, to you for your student to attend. And that's why it's key to have competitive offers, especially from the private schools, because some of these schools will take that into account. Not all schools, but some will. Um, so another good reason to kind of expand the net. Now, that doesn't mean your kid should apply to 45 schools. I think that's a little insane, but for sure you want to kind of expand the net a little bit in terms of, not just applying to maybe one or two. Um, and then other kind of tips and tricks on how to appeal, like I said, you want them to kind of understand your situation, right? So you've got to bring some color or background to that situation. Um, don't hesitate to show the other awards from the other schools. Again, understanding that they're probably only going to care about similar colleges, right? Stanford isn't going to care about what the community college offered, right? You got to figure out schools that are kind of in the same wheelhouse. Um, and like I said, especially for the merit scholarships, not a bad idea to have the student lead the charge, especially if you don't qualify for any need-based grants and you're just looking at the merit scholarships. Maybe you delay sending in that enrollment deposit. Um, Obviously, they do know you could make multiple deposits, but if you delay that before you hear back from the appeal, maybe they'll think you're still kind of on the fence. Again, I do think that um, this is primarily easiest at private schools. And also kind of the less popular the school, you know, I think the better chance that you have, especially these smaller liberal arts colleges that don't have 100,000 kids applying, they're a business too. And sometimes these schools, if you just ask them for money, they'll just give you an extra 2,000 because they know, hey, if that gets this kid to commit, that's really all we're looking for here. So, um, again, there's no downside here in appealing. And this is obviously something that we're helping our clients with, not now, but kind of as we get into the winter and spring. Um, Here's a little snapshot of some of the clients that we worked with this past year in terms of the specific schools we dealt with and the increase in the appeal amount. Now, this takes into account all different types of appeals, but the point is you can see a lot of different schools on this list, um, with a lot of increased offers. So for sure, once you get into the winter and spring and you're evaluating where your kids really wants to go and you have those awards, that would be a great time to get in touch with us if you wanted to try and figure out how to put your best foot forward in terms of making the best use of trying to get a successful appeal out there. Um, Anything I missed there, you think, Jason, in terms of these appeals?
No, it's just, as you said, a really important part of the process. Again, I'm joking. I'm the former dean that spills the beans. These, as Dan said, these schools are big businesses, and a lot of schools will hold back. They'll use money, financial aid, as a way to try to get you to sign up. It's like a coupon or a discount. And a lot of schools hold money back in the spring on purpose because they know they may, if they're not meeting their enrollment targets, they may need to throw some extra money at some of those kids to try to get them to commit and enroll. So use that to your advantage. Use that as leverage. And the other thing too is I know right now some parents are starting to get merit scholarship offers, and it's very exciting. It pulls on your heartstrings, but but we recommend don't commit to anything. Early decision, maybe that's different, but don't commit to anything. Play out the process all the way through the end of April. May 1st is decision day, because the longer you wait, the more nervous the colleges get, and you never know, they might throw even more money at you at the last minute. If they, again, if they're not hitting their enrollment targets, they might throw more money at you. So when it comes to appeals, don't be afraid of it. You're not going to lose your admissions offer or anything like that. And so if you have special circumstances, that's what the appeals process really is for. So don't be scared of it. Use it to, the way it's there for a reason. So use it. All right. So hopefully that was helpful, everybody. I tried to get, boy, we got a lot of questions answered. 117. We tried to get to as many.
118.
118. Let's go. That's pretty good, I think. Yeah. All right. So last thing we want to say is I'm going to share screen if it's okay with you, Dan. I'm going to ask you to,
Oh yeah, do I have to hold on?
yeah, let me share screen here if I can find it. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful, everyone. But if you feel like you want some additional help, either correcting forms or you haven't filed them yet, or looking down the road at the appeal process or private scholarships, or after they decide where they're going, helping you navigate the loan landscape and get good loans and avoid bad loans or whatever. We have a full service one-on-one package where we kind of do everything for you. We call it "Wake Me Up When It's Over," which I love. I think that's the most hilarious package name. "Wake Me Up When It's Over." This is where we kind of do all the heavy lifting and take it off your plate. And if you're interested in that, I can kind of this is the landing page we're going to send to everybody after tonight's webinar. But if you feel like you want to get some help with the whole rest of the process, because you're just at the beginning, you actually that's going to go all the way. You're going to start getting financial aid award offers. Then you're going to have to go through the appeals process in March, April. Then you make your decision. Then the bill's going to show up. Then you're going to be like, how do we get a 4 year? How are we going to pay this 4 year bill? Could we get aid in years 2, 3, and 4? If you want help with everything, we have a one-on-one full service package called "Wake Me Up When It's Over," and we are running a discount, a special discount. It's $500 off if you sign up by midnight tonight using the coupon code GOBBLE. So you'd want to you're going to click here for the full details. This is the financial aid package. Again, this is the full service Wake Me Up. Last year, 98% of our families loved it. The average savings like $123,000 something. I think the lowest family saved like $5,000 or something like that. But what you get is, again, we'll help you with the financial aid forms, including updates and amendments if you need any changes. We'll help you with scholarships. If you're still looking at colleges, we'll make some college recs for you for schools to give you a good deal. We'll help you with loans. We'll help you build a budget so you know when to use your 529 money. Do you use it all year one or spread it out all 4 years? Those kinds of things. We'll review all your awards. We'll do appeals. So it's basically unlimited one-on-one guidance, for parents that have very complicated circumstances, or just don't want to do it. Take it off my plate kind of thing. And so if you're thinking you might want some help, but you're not sure you want that much help or whatever, you're like, I don't know, maybe I just need help correcting a form. Maybe I just need help with appeals or something like that. You can book a free consult to discuss that with us. It's a 15-minute consult. We're basically happy to chat with you about your circumstances and give you some advice. Be like, yeah, we probably could help you a lot if you want us to. As much it costs, here's how much we think we could save you. Or we'll be honest with you. We'll be like, look, honestly, if Penn State's your top choice, yeah, we can't help you, kind of thing, maybe, or something. But if you're curious about getting more help from us, you just want to talk about it, book a free consult. It's free. The consult's free. We just ask you to book by midnight tonight because this is incredibly busy time of the year and our calendars are completely full. They fill up very fast, and again, time's of the essence here. The clock is ticking. Some of you maybe even past deadline, so you want to get some help as quickly as possible. So to incentivize you, we say please book this consult by midnight tonight, and it'll be free for you. So now, if you're a DIYer and you're like, I'm just going to try to figure out this all on my own, that's okay too. We have an option for you. It's only $5 a month to get a premium MyCap premium membership. And that does a couple of things. That's going to unlock all the premium features of our platform. I had a question in here about, hey, I can only do 3 schools. I got a bunch of other schools. How do I project out for them? Well, you would upgrade to the premium. And then it's also going to be in a premium member. It's going to give you access to some, members only workshops and some other helpful stuff too as well. So again, if you're a DIYer, that's for $5 a month, it's going to give you a ton of help. But if you're a kind of person, you're like, I just want an expert to do it for me. Like that's why I hire my tax return person, even though I know how to do taxes, I don't want to do them. You can book a consult, talk with us about those services, what they entail, if it's the right fit for you. And if we, honestly, if we feel like we can get you an ROI, and we'll talk to you about that. So I'm going to drop, last thing I'm going to do here is for those of you who are interested in talking to us about our full service package, I'm going to drop a link into the chat for you to book that consult so you can get on the calendar and talk with us as quickly as possible because like I said, you're down to the wire, times of the essence. So that's how you can get some additional help. You got a DIY option with us and you got a full service option where we can do it for you. We got a few other options too we can talk about, but hopefully that gives you some options to get some additional help beyond tonight's meeting. All right. Well, we did it. We got 3 minutes left. That's pretty good. 130 questions, 3 minutes left. Dan, anything you want to end with or?
No, no, yeah, like I think you did a great job. It's just, obviously everyone, if you have questions or feel like you need some help, we're here. Just reach out for that free consult, and then we can take a look at your individual situation and better advise on what package might make the most sense for you given the scope of what you need done.
Yeah, there's a lot of money on the line. This is one of the biggest investments families make anymore is putting their kids through college. So you want to make sure you're getting every penny you can out of financial aid. So if you're thinking about outsourcing it to experts, we're happy to help you. All right. I think that's it for us, everybody. We'll get a recording, so keep an eye out for that. You can always email support@collegeaidpro.com if you don't get the recording or can't find it or you want a copy of it. So take care. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night.